Hey, this is Chip Shell, your host, and this week I've got Tony Ferrara, a guitarist and musician that I really like and admire. Tony's one of those technical guys, not just in terms of equipment, but also in the way that he plays. I met Tony back when he started The Groove, a really popular band in town today, but I knew that he had also played in the Moonlighters, which was also a super popular lounge act during the 1980s. Here's a little behind-the-scenes look about this episode. We actually had to re-record the entire thing on different days. We had gone through and recorded the whole thing one time. I went back and listened to it, and a lot of the audio had gotten garbled and digitized for some reason. So Tony was really a trooper. He was really accommodating, though. So he came back, and we re-recorded it. So I think you'll like this episode of the Erie Music History Podcast featuring Tony Ferrara. And please hit that like and subscribe button and rate the podcast on any app that you use. Thanks a lot. All right. Welcome to the Erie Music History Podcast. And today my guest is Tony Ferrara. Thank you for being with me.
Thanks so much for inviting me, Chip.
Yeah, this is great. And you and I are Facebook friends.
Yep.
We have never played together. I know you because you work at Erie Insurance in IT. I see a lot of your posts.
Yep.
I know that you're a gearhead. Is that right?
That's true.
Yeah. You know a little bit about guitars and amps.
Well, let's put it this way. I'm a fan of guitars and amps.
Okay. All right. And besides founding The Groove, really, I know you from the Moonlighters back in the day. So we'll get to that. But you did something that no one has ever done for me before, and you gave me a great list of, this is my life in music, and I greatly appreciate that.
I needed that just to kind of get my brain organized.
Right. Spark those memories. So you know how this goes. I usually like to start in the beginning, when you first started learning, in your case, guitar. Did you play other instruments or no?
No, I wish I would have maybe started on keys or something.
Right.
But it was pretty much guitar the whole way.
Even now?
Yeah. I wish I would have taken the time to really get into keys, because I really think, if you play keys well, you can get any sound out of them.
Right.
But, I'll just have to do with guitar.
And you've played with some pretty good keyboard players over the years, and you're still playing with Tim now.
Yep.
And, before you even knew how to play guitar, so you said your first guitar teacher and mentor was Jim Minucci?
Yep, Jimmy Minucci.
Where at?
He had a studio called Tune Toppers.
Tune Toppers.
Tune Toppers was, and that relates back to a band that he was in. They were on TV back in the 50s.
Wow.
And his brother John, and I'm not sure who all was in the band that was on TV. I wasn't even thought of at that point.
Me either.
But
where was Tune Toppers' studio?
It was on, it was basically on 18th and State, kind of kitty corner from Holiday Inn downtown at the time.
Right in that area.
Not far from Canfield Radiator.
Yep, I gotcha.
But it was a very narrow storefront facing State.
Okay. All right.
And, it wasn't much to look at. But, he would have his students come in there and...
Wasn't a store, it was just...
Well, he had a few things to sell, but his number one product was just teaching, yeah.
And what were you carrying in that place when you went? What was your
my
guitar?
Goodness. I don't remember, but it might have been like a W.T. Grant,
Gotcha.
simulation of a Strat or something. It was very much a beginner guitar.
How old?
Let's see. I actually started, if you're talking about starting.
Yeah.
My Aunt Mary took me to Dick Bowling because she used to listen to Dick Bowling when he played in clubs.
Yeah, sure.
So for her, if you're going to take lessons back then, you'd go to Bowling's.
Yeah.
And I had a teacher and rented a guitar that had action that was, pretty much medieval torture.
I was going to say high.
Yeah, it was like, seriously, it had to be close to half an inch.
Ripped up your fingers?
With heavy gauge strings on. And stuff.
Right.
with no truss rod because there's no way to adjust. Of course, I wouldn't have known.
You're right back then
to do that then anyway. But
that's where you started.
That's where I started, and I might have been at 7 at that time. But
oh boy!
But I just didn't have. Even though I had the desire, maybe it's because I was battling that guitar.
Yeah,
I didn't really go back to it. I got involved in some other sports at that time.
Okay.
And then went back to it maybe around, I was maybe 11 or 12.
Okay. All right.
And that's when I started with Jim.
Okay, that's when you started with Jim.
Right.
Gotcha. And he introduced you to guys like Gene Leone, Don Pursuti. They were from that same generation?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how did he introduce? Were they teaching there or?
No, actually, it was just over time.
Okay.
That I think it started off where he was playing at the Manicore Club with his brother and Gene Leone and Dom.
Oh, okay.
Were playing there. So I think that was my first exposure to more than one guy from that generation.
Yeah.
And all those guys were just phenomenal musicians.
Yeah.
Super nice, very supportive of Jim's younger student. That
oh,
he brought
really?
in. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's cool.
As I recall, they had me sit in and I played some Tony Mottola guitar arrangement.
Okay.
And of course they pretended like I was good.
They clapped. Good job, buddy. That's all right. Yeah, I got you. And so, eventually, this is 11th grade. You're not playing in any bands or anything yet.
Well, 11th grade. When I was 16, I was working at Oziki's on Parade Street.
Oh,
as sort of like
right.
a gopher kind of a guy.
Yeah, right.
And while I was working there, I met Jim Buman.
Okay.
Who introduced me to Joe Parker and a few other guys that became
that are all
my
still
first
playing.
real rock band.
Jim Buman and Joe Parker.
Joe
Okay.
Parker,
Yeah.
right. I was 16 and they were like 20-something.
All right.
And I think Jim needed like a second guitar player or whatever, so he invited me to join. And that was a great time. We had a lot of fun, played some fun music. And
Did you play out?
Yeah, we played a couple outdoor events.
Okay.
Maybe a couple high school dances.
Parties, dances, yeah.
Things like that. We didn't play often, but we played enough to have some memories of playing.
What was the name? You remember?
The band,
yeah,
what's
band
that?
name?
The band name was called Bogart.
Oh, this is Bogart.
That was Bogart.
So this is like 74?
Yeah,
right.
probably around that era. Let's see. I don't think I have. Yeah, that would have been 74. I just had to look at my cheat sheet.
So, yeah, I was going to say, I have a cheat sheet here, too. So you've got Jim, you've got Joe Parker, Mark Osiki bass.
Yes.
And not related to...
Not related to the music store family.
Okay. All
right. He was a very good musician.
And was John McElhaney the drummer then?
John McElhaney was our drummer.
Okay. All right. And you were all, like you said, they're a little bit older than you. Was everybody? So you were the young guy in the band?
I was the kid.
Oh, were you? Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
All right. And so you meet him at Osiki's. You're working there as a gopher.
Yeah, I'll call it that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Do you go on to teach?
Eventually, but not there. Actually, I take it back. Somehow or other, and I don't remember how this happened, I ended up at Jerry Oziki's store in the West Erie Plaza.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And I taught for a while there.
Okay.
Vinny Stefanelli and Tony Stefanelli were both teaching there.
Right.
I was there for a while, and then I'm not sure why or when I left, but I did.
Okay.
And shortly thereafter, after Bogart, I decided to work with somebody who could help me develop more, and I had some interest in jazz type styles, just kind of broaden my repertoire and so on. So that's when I heard other people talking, and they said, if you want to really up your game, you need to study with Ed Pouton.
Ah, yes.
So that's where Ed came from.
Okay, all right.
It's not like I hung out at Markham's on 11th Street back in the day. I really didn't go there much.
Okay, yeah.
But when I started taking lessons with Ed, I believe he was on 26th Street at the time.
Okay.
And I learned a tremendous amount from Ed. Ed, Jim was a great teacher, a great mentor, and brought me through certain things. But when it came to really getting into theory,
yeah,
and and things of that nature, harmony theory, and just take jazz guitar.
Right. Right.
Ed brought me to that
level.
Well, I don't know about that level, but at least I had I was learning about it.
Right. And he's still teaching today. He's
Ed
been in New York City for so many years.
Still teaching in New York City.
Yeah.
I think he just recently decided to move to Florida, though.
Oh, okay.
So, no more New York City winters for him.
Yeah, right. And you can listen to that episode, the Ed Pouton Russell episode in last season 2.
Excellent.
Great. And you hear Ed's name pop up a lot of times. So you're probably not the only person that's listening to this podcast that was taught by him, right? I mean, he was a popular teacher back then.
Oh, yeah.
And so the jazz thing, like what transpires with that for you?
Well, for me, it was just more of a broadening of my knowledge.
Okay,
and
right.
It in a sense, I really was never a true jazz cat.
Yeah.
Because the things that I would listen to, which were Ed turned me on to Pat Martino and things like that. But I found myself listening to things like the Jazz Crusaders with Larry Carlton.
Okay.
And a lot of that wasn't, it was like horn-driven, and it was very much groove-driven.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
No, I gotcha. Yeah.
I just found myself really enjoying that kind of genre.
Yeah.
So as things transpired, I found myself doing that, and in the process, focusing on that style, or at least liking that style,
right,
playing
right.
it. It led me to other opportunities.
And so Bogart, we should be clear, was not that type of sound.
No.
It was straight ahead rock and roll.
It was
right?
Doobie Brothers, Kansas,
Okay.
Montrose,
Yeah.
fun stuff.
Yeah, right.
But, there's so many bands that do that and do it exceedingly well.
Right.
And it's not like it was a strategic thing on my point to not go that way.
Yeah.
It just happened to be that, this is kind of what I like better.
Yeah.
Or I appreciate it. I don't know. I still like rock stuff.
Yeah.
Some of the most, when I have fun on stage, it's typically when I'm, playing
Jamming.
Something that's more of a rock flavor.
Right.
But, of course, that's kind of what guitarists like to do.
Absolutely. Gotcha. All right. So what then are you looking for? What does that lead you to? You didn't play jazz or anything, right?
No, pseudo jazz, as I like to call it.
Oh, okay. All right.
But one thing's led to another. So after Bogart, I just a number of years passed, and I met a gentleman by the name of George Barber,
Okay.
who was a sax player, who at the time was just coming out of Wave. They had a phenomenal horn section back in the day.
Yeah, right.
And George was their sax player.
So this is in the mid-'70s.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So, George was in the process of putting something new together. And, we were working on that project together. And he had an opportunity, being a sax player, to go with a band that would eventually become Skylift.
Okay.
The foundation of that band was what I would call undoubtedly the phenomenal Macmillan Life Band.
Oh, right.
Who were, primarily based out of Erie. I don't hear anybody mention them.
Right.
And that's a shame.
I've heard the name. They were like a show band.
Yeah. And they were touring, and I believe they went up and down the East Coast. Maybe, I don't know how far west they went.
Okay.
But all excellent musicians. They went to Edinburgh University, at least some of them did.
Okay.
And all were like music majors, so they knew it. They knew their stuff.
Right. And it was a big band, right?
Yeah, they had a 3-piece horn section.
Oh, okay.
Which, I took note of,
I was
of
gonna
how
say,
great that sounded.
That's kind of leading me, to where you kind of go eventually.
I mean, once you experience that sound.
Yeah.
One of the things that I learned is a horn section isn't a horn section without a trombone.
Oh.
Because in Skylift we had Dale Scully playing trombone with us initially.
Okay.
And, that deeper sound in with, the sax and the trumpet just adds so much. It just gives it that horn section.
Yeah,
sound.
right.
And I'm sure a baritone sax would do something similar, but the trombone
really adds it.
So when the time came for us to look for a horn section, I insisted that we had to have a trombone.
Yeah.
And fortunately, we have a great one with Kent Tucker.
Okay. All right. And so go back to Skylift. So, go back to Macmillan in Life.
Okay.
So Skylift, you said, forms out of
the ashes of
Macmillan. I was going to say let's make it even more dramatic.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. All right. So Macmillan in Life, super popular, traveling around. Tell me a little bit about them, though, because I know that's a big part of this story.
Oh, right. And you can't tell a story without talking about Dave Macmillan.
Okay, yeah.
So Dave is one of these people that, a multi-talented, kind of a musical genius kind of a guy. He'll play guitar great, sit down at a keyboard and tear it up. And, vocally, the guy is just incredible.
Okay.
Very, very good.
Still with us, or?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right.
He's out in Meadville. And back when Chovies was a thing, he would do a single down there, and definitely worth the trip for the Dave Macmillan's solo act and the Chovies food.
Interesting, yeah.
But, Dave was just and all the guys in that band were just professional.
Top-notch.
Yeah, very nice.
Got it.
And quite frankly, you said, where did the things I learned with Ed come into play? Well, that band, if I wouldn't have had that kind of exposure to the types of things that I was exposed to, it would have been very difficult because these guys were all, top notch. And one of the songs that we did was the theme from Rocky. Roy Helm was our trumpet player.
Okay.
And Roy, I kid you not, would play the Maynard Ferguson stuff perfectly.
Yeah.
He'd hit the high notes. It was just incredible.
And we should point out, that was 77. That was popular. I mean, that was. This is just current music.
On the radio.
Yeah, on the radio. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
All right.
And, another thing that was on the radio at the time was something that would tie into their phenomenal show that they had.
Yeah.
Now, keep in mind, this was back in the day when you could set up and play a place for 2 weeks.
Oh, right.
So when these guys set up, they had not only lights and sound, but they took the time to put in some special effects and things of that nature that they used in their show.
Okay.
And there's no way for me to do their show justice by describing it, but I'm going to do it anyway.
All right, great.
They would start their show with different medleys, a Beach Boy medley. They did some Motown medley. And then the thing that I think brought people there night after night after night was when they had their Star Wars kind of finale.
Wow.
They broke into, they're wearing their jumpsuits that they had. They all had
they all dressed the same.
Matching outfits, matching shirts, the whole thing. This is the 70s.
Right, yeah.
If you were
some ruffles, maybe?
Well, I don't know about the ruffles.
Okay.
If you were a professional musician back then, playing that circuit.
Yeah.
That's what you did.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's what
you had to have
wore.
That. Right. No jeans. No. Yeah.
It wasn't. Yeah, and it wasn't like it was weird or anything. That was just normal.
Sure. Right.
But anyway, they came out, tore into the beginning of Star Wars. Star Wars, main theme. Dun,
main theme.
Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, horns are going. It's just great. Everything sounds perfect. And then what happens is that all of a sudden the lights go down or dim. Yeah, they go way down, and you hear the Moog synthesizer. Joe Cirillo at the time was playing keys with them.
Yeah,
and he had his oscillator sounding just like a lightsaber. In
wow!
The darkness. So then all of a sudden you see Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker coming out with their red and blue lightsabers.
Wow!
They hooked something up with on a flashlight or something.
Yeah, right.
But it looked phenomenal in the lighting, and they were in full costume.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, you had Darth Vader.
Had the helmet and
Luke.
everything.
The whole thing. The whole thing.
Holy cow.
So you have the Moog sound effects.
Yeah, right.
And they're going at it. And then all of a sudden they're having this battle. And there's music, the band's still playing. So I think Luke hits Darth. Flashpots go off. Smoke everywhere.
Flashpots. That's not something you hear about anymore.
No. Yeah. And there was like multiple.
Yeah.
And this was taking place, by the way, at the Spartan Inn, which is now the Quality Inn.
Yeah, right.
It seemed so much bigger when I was 18, 19.
It's a lounge. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. But all this stuff was happening there with this low ceiling. Which
right.
I didn't realize it was that low until, I grew 2 more inches.
Yeah.
But, it was just incredible.
That is quite a show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, that's something that, as much as I'm sure bands would like to offer something like that today.
Right, right.
When you're playing a one-nighter and, you're lucky just to get set up in time, let alone do anything special.
Yeah, that's a good point. We always talk about that, how back in the day you did do those week-long, 3 days, whatever it is, But nowadays everything's a one-nighter, so you can't really get that involved. I mean, the Groove obviously has way more of a show than a lot of folks.
Well,
but that just comes with who you guys are.
Well, when you talk about setting up and playing for a long period of time, Timmy Popotnik reminded me of a record that the Moonlighters had for ourselves. I'm sure other people have done a longer stretch.
Yeah.
We played the Holiday Inn downtown. I think it was in 1982.
Okay.
I want to say it was March, but we'll have to ask Timmy for the actual, time frame.
He's the historian.
Well, he remembered this. I didn't. But after he reminded me, it flashed back. We played 32 days straight.
Holy cow.
We played Sundays. There's I don't know what the circumstances were, but we played 32 days straight.
Wow.
And then on Fridays, we did a happy hour too.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
And those are all 10 to 2 gigs, probably, right?
Holiday Inn downtown. What was it? 9:30 to 1:30, and
Still.
then happy hour was like 7. What was it? Something to 7.
Still, a Tuesday night at the Holiday Inn in Erie, Pennsylvania, in 1982 couldn't have been drawing a lot of people.
No.
Yeah.
That's when you learned how to just motivate yourself without a crowd.
Yeah, right.
But that was part of the job.
Wow. Holy cow. So, we talk about the Moonlighters. I mentioned the Moonlighters. We're still on Skylift, and so Skylift, like we said, comes out of Macmillan in Life. You joined Skylift in 77, something around there?
That's right.
And then how long do you stick with them?
Skylift was not a band that lasted very long, at least in Erie. George Barber reminded me recently that some of the members of the band went down to Florida.
Oh, okay. All right.
And I wasn't ready to do that, with what we were doing. But I'm not sure exactly how that even turned out once they went down there.
And they were going down there to play music?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Did you travel at all with them, or?
Well, Skylift played Cleveland a few times.
Oh, okay.
We went to downtown Cleveland, did some things. But I can't remember exactly where we played, but that's probably because I drove and rode in Kevin Bensink's little Subaru.
Oh.
So by the time I got there, you
don't remember anything.
Yeah, it was. I wasn't the same person that I was when I originally got into Subaru.
Poor Kevin.
Secondhand smoke.
And so, when did you graduate high school?
76.
Okay, so you're right out of high school in
I was
Skylift.
a kid. I was a little kid.
No job. You're doing music.
I was, yeah. I think I was teaching at Markham's prior to joining Skylift.
Yeah. All right. But that's it. All right.
Yeah.
All right. And so how do you get to the Moonlighters? Is that the next step?
Well, pretty much. There was like a connector project in between the two.
Okay.
With the, I think I met Timmy when I was playing with Skylift. Actually, Timmy and Steve Witkowski, who would be original members of the Moonlighters and play with the Moonlighters for the 17-plus years that the Moonlighters went on.
Okay.
Pretty much I left when Skylift pretty much fizzled out. Steve and I went on to do a band. I think we played with Scott Kuhn on keys.
Okay.
In a band called Cinch for a period of time.
Cinch.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And like that wasn't a band that lasted very long. That's why I call it kind of a connector.
Yeah.
project.
Right. Yeah.
I've been in those. And then I think Preston Lindy, who was playing with I can't think of his name right now.
Who was he playing with?
Ron Sedgy.
Sorry,
Ron. My apologies.
Yeah,
for
right.
not pulling that off the top of my head.
Yeah, I've heard of that. He had, was it Elvis or?
Yeah. He did more of like a Las Vegas type act.
Okay, all right.
I wouldn't call him like an Elvis impersonator.
Okay.
But he had sort of that L.A. kind of a thing, and I come to think of it, a couple of his outfits could be construed as like an Elvis costume.
Sure, gotcha.
But he didn't wear. I don't believe he wore that constantly.
All right.
So I think Preston Lindy was getting ready to leave that band.
All right. And for those who don't know, Preston's a great guitar player.
Preston Lindy's phenomenal.
Musical teacher and everything. Yeah, right.
And I have a little Preston Lindy story that I'll share with everybody. Yeah. Preston Lindy was playing with Timmy and Steve, and Tracy Soggs was on drums at the time. And they were playing "Laughter in the Rain," a song that you wouldn't get too, were excited about. Right?
Sure, right, yeah.
Preston took a solo in that song that was it was a composition within a composition. It was just, for many decades I could sing that solo to you.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was just a beautiful thing. There were aspects of that had like some Grant Geisman. Now, if Grant Geisman was Chuck Mangione guitar player.
Okay, all right.
And he took some like the really cool elements of that.
Yeah.
And his own thing. It was just an absolutely beautiful solo.
It's amazing that you remember that.
Oh, it was that
obviously
good.
how good it was.
It was that good.
Yeah, right.
It was a work of art.
So wait, are you following Preston in the next band? Are you the next guy?
Yeah, lucky me, right?
Okay, wow, those are some shoes to step into.
Yeah, which, I might have, filled the baby toe.
Gotcha. So, but Tim's still there.
Yeah, that band basically became the Moonlighters.
It became the Moonlighters, right?
Yeah. So we had Timmy, Steve, Tracy Soggs was our original drummer.
Okay.
And Wendy was singing backups at the time.
Wendy Leonardo's?
Yes.
Or what's she called? Yeah.
Well, back then she was Wendy Fisher.
Okay, all right.
At that time.
All right.
But yeah, Wendy Leonardo's today.
All right. And drummer was Tracy, but then eventually became Kevin?
Yeah.
Okay.
Tracy left the band after a relatively short time.
Oh, okay.
And joined Wave.
Oh, okay.
I can't understand why he would do that.
Yeah, I was going to say. I mean, we're mentioning a lot of these bands that were bigger. I always say show bands, but they're put together. They're professional. It's not four guys in jeans and T-shirts up there. Wave played for years.
Oh, they were great. They were
same
great.
thing. It was the Tyson family. Fronted by a woman primarily, much like you guys with Wendy, right?
Yeah.
Although multiple singers.
Yeah, but you can't beat the sibling harmony that
Sure.
they had and personality that they had on stage.
Right.
I mean, they were great.
But like Wave, it seems like the Moonlighters went through a few folks over the years.
Right. After Tracy left, Kevin Olson came on board on drums, and Kevin did a great job. Let's see, while Kevin was with us, we were. This is a funny story.
Yeah,
I'll
like
tell
funny
you.
stories
because Kevin is kind of. It's not that he's like the primary character in the story, because he's really not. Once we get to the story,
all right.
But Kevin was the person that alerted me to the primary character in that story.
Okay.
Let me set the thing.
Set
We're
the
playing
stage.
a Marriott in, I believe it was New York State, and we're playing a dinner set. Typical dinner set material, and Kevin was a rock solid drummer.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I hear Kevin screwing up, and I just look back like, what's going on? And he points to this particular table with his drumstick, and I look, I'm not seeing anything. I just like a woman there with, some tan dress.
Okay.
And I turned back to him. I shrugged. I said, "What's up?" He says, "Look again." And I did. And evidently what happened was this woman was wearing a sundress.
Okay.
She stood up, pulled it off, and sat back down at her table completely naked.
Ah, that's the tan outfit that she
That's
had
the tan outfit.
Nice.
My mind wasn't going to allow me to believe what I was looking
at. So they escort her out, I imagine.
Yes. They did that very discreetly. And from what I was told, I guess she was with a particular care facility, not an elder care.
Gotcha. Right.
But some type of a psychological facility.
Escaped.
Yeah. And managed to catch our show.
Gotcha. I love the stories of, the people in the crowd, the fans in the crowd. I hear those all the time, This person got arrested while sitting at the bar while we were playing, or this person was... I've heard more than one story of the nakedness.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow.
But those are ones that you don't forget.
Yeah, absolutely. There you go.
Yeah.
We segued from Kevin right to the naked lady.
But you guys, you mentioned right there, we played in New York State, so you did travel a little bit with the Moonlighters.
Right.
You had some significant gigs. I mean, on your list here, you opened for Three Dog Night at Warner Theater.
Yep.
How was that?
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I learned about being an opening band and monitors, though. I think we both shared an experience.
Indeed. So you got the short end of the stick, too?
Yeah. And it's funny, I was, after I worked at Markham's, I had a good relationship with all those guys there.
Sure.
Keith Vashecko was a very good friend. Of course, he was everybody's friend.
Right.
But, he asked me how the show went. And I said, it was okay, Keith, but it probably could have been better, because I explained the monitor situation to him. And he looked at me and made a gesture, and I'll just leave it at that. He said they were just, playing with you guys.
Gotcha. Right.
And in a weird way, it actually made me feel better because I thought that they were incompetent.
Yeah, right.
So at least we now know they were jerks.
Yeah. Make the opening band sound bad, so the main band sounds even better. Right.
If that's it, I didn't think that would actually happen.
Sure. Yeah. And it, like you said, it happened to me many years later, and so it's a thing. So, yeah. All right, so you travel around a little bit. You played venues in Philadelphia, Buffalo, Rochester, and as far west as Grand Rapids, Michigan. So you're on the road. You have funny stories on the road?
Oh, well, there is one particular story.
Okay. Love road stories.
Yeah, this one is definitely G-rated.
Okay.
But, Wendy, forgive me. I'm going to tell the story about you and Steve in the laundromat.
All right.
Okay. Well, one particular time we were in, I want to say New York State, but I could be wrong. And it was laundry day for the Moonlighters. So we went to a laundromat.
You're doing those long gigs, like you said, like you're at a place for a week or whatever.
Oh, yeah. So it was probably at least 2 weeks.
All right. So you have to, you don't think about that. Like your days are probably boring and you probably have to go do.
Yeah, I don't even remember what we did that often during the days, because your equipment is locked in the lounge.
Right.
Some of those places would let you, go in and rehearse as long as it was like a dead time.
Yeah.
But I don't think we rehearsed every day. But this one particular day, like getting back to laundry day.
Yeah, it's laundry day. Yeah.
Steve, God rest his soul, must have been feeling a little bit devilish this particular day. Now, you have to picture Wendy's hair at the time. Wendy's, nice blonde hair, and she had a perm.
Okay.
That was quite large.
Big. That's 80s.
80s.
Yeah, right.
And she looked great in it.
Sure.
Well, Steve decided, and I don't know why, he decided it would be a good idea to put his freshly washed and dried whitey tighties over Wendy's head.
Oh, I'm sure that went over great.
Well, Wendy's got a great sense of humor, but it was certainly tested that day.
Yeah, I bet.
But you have to visualize whitey tighties on Wendy's head, and each leg hole was off on the side, so her perm could
sticking out
stick
ears.
out.
Yeah.
Like she looked like blonde Minnie Mouse.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
and maybe that's why I still remember it.
Yeah, I'm sure that is.
Because I have that visual image of Wendy with her Minnie Mouse ears.
Well, Wendy, I'm sure that Tony remembers you for all your singing and great times on stage, too.
Absolutely.
You guys played around for, like you said, 17 years. The band was in existence.
The band was in existence for 17 years. I left basically because I kind of had a mental image of my life's timeline.
Okay.
And, the playing in the band, I kind of developed, especially being on the road, this thought of all bars smell the same.
Yeah.
They ran, which of course they do. But another thing that had a real big impression on me was years and years prior to that, there was an old black and white film about a boxer.
Okay.
Who was in his 30s, cauliflower ears, still going out with the dream of, winning the championship.
Yeah, gotcha.
So, that would kind of made a profound image on me.
And you're in your 20s.
Yeah.
Early 20s.
Yeah. I had this thing, though, about the 25 and older crowd, because when you're young, that is way out there, I was even 23 at the time.
Okay, yeah.
And I would still say the 25
those
and
guys
older
are
crowd.
old. Yeah.
Well, it just seemed to me at the time that the people of that age bracket would go to different places. There were certain places where older people went.
Okay.
And, in hindsight, they're probably more like 30 to 35. But,
right.
At that point, that was my line of demarcation for whatever other, for all intents and purposes, that's just what it was. So I had some friends that would come out to breakfast after we were done playing.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them was studying computer science, and the other one was studying accounting.
Okay.
So I decided that I would take one of each class. Because at this point in time, I went to Tech for high school, so I had...
So you have no college at this point?
I had no college at that point.
Okay, all right.
So, but I realized, because I had a girlfriend that would jokingly, kind of on the square, say, get a job.
Yeah, right.
And, that kind of takes, that has an effect on you, too.
Yeah.
But, so at any rate, getting back to that story, one accounting class, one computer class, and I just didn't like the accounting at all.
Okay.
Because that was, before Excel.
Where was this at?
This was Edinburgh.
Oh, at Edinburgh. Okay,
yeah.
right. Yeah.
And I was paying for this all myself.
Yeah, right.
The Moonlighters, a lot of people, some people, a person had asked me in the past, why do you always talk about the Moonlighters? What's so special? Why, you're in other bands. Why are you talking about the Moonlighters?
Yeah.
Well, it's because the Moonlighters knew that I was going to school. And, they could have potentially replaced me.
Yeah, right.
But they didn't.
Okay.
They let me work my way through it. Maybe they thought I'd never get a job. But, I want to credit, them being loyal to me as a friend.
And you made enough money playing in the Moonlighters.
Playing in the Moonlighters.
To pay for college?
To pay for college.
Oh,
now,
wow.
Granted, I lived at home.
Yeah,
so it's
still.
not like I had a major living expenses.
Yeah.
But I was able to, fund my college education by playing music.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, that's quite a accomplishment, And so you decide, I'm going to leave the Moonlighters to focus on
right
IT.
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 Much.
And that's how you got into it. Do you continue straight, like for 4 years?
Oh yeah.
And then on.
IT.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I will. I don't know if we want to go through my work history.
No, but you're still playing with them for a while, and is it through the full 4 years?
Actually, I got an associate degree.
Oh, okay. All right.
And was fortunate enough to get an internship, and that was it. Boom, I was off.
Cool. Yeah. Always in Erie.
Always in Erie.
Okay.
Yep.
Where else did you work?
I was at Smith Meter, which is where I really cut my teeth and had great, brilliant people around me that really made that happen.
Yeah.
Because I absorbed so much. What really helps is if coming out of college and coming out of the environment that I was in before, I didn't realize the guy I was working with was a genius
at Smith
Meter.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to keep up with him. I'm taking manuals home, studying like a maniac. And, of course, I'm not a genius, but I learned enough.
Yeah, right.
That when I went to my next opportunity, all of a sudden, I just had so much background.
Yeah.
That it really, really helped me progress through that.
Sure. Throughout those years, at one point you said you had a girlfriend. I mean, I often think about, when did you start a family?
It was in the late 80s.
Okay.
Got married and had two daughters.
Okay.
Both of which I tried to get started in music and failed miserably.
Okay.
They had their own ideas.
All right. And your wife's not a musician either?
No, not at all.
All right. And is anybody else in your family?
No.
No?
Come to think of it.
You're the only one that got the bug.
Yeah.
All right. So you get married in the late 80s, but you finished playing with the Moonlighters around that same time?
Yeah, actually, I turned over the guitar role. I believe it was to Rick Scandalberry. Initially.
Yeah. I know that name. Yeah.
And then Keith Fischeckel played with the Moonlighters for a while.
Played with everybody, it seems like. Yeah. Wow.
And then finally, the guy that really stuck with the Moonlighters for the second portion of the band, considering how long I was in the band, the longest portion of the band was Steve Borkowski, another guy who's no longer with us.
Okay.
Very talented musician, super nice guy.
Yeah. I don't know that name. And I know that, over the years, you guys, I mean, there wasn't a whole bunch of, Wendy stayed, right?
We had one person that filled in for Wendy's maternity leave.
Oh, okay.
Who was somebody that I went to junior high school with that was more of an acquaintance back then.
Okay.
But I remember Tina Sales.
Oh, yeah.
From the high school days.
I know that name, yeah.
Junior high school days, actually. Came up for a Black History Week performance with her sister Renee.
Okay.
And they came out and they did a cappella, just totally a cappella Michael Jackson tunes.
Oh, wow.
Beautiful sibling harmony between the two of them. And it was just incredible.
Yeah.
I can't describe it. It was a jaw-dropping thing.
Yeah, you think about how long ago
singing.
that was, and you still remember that.
Yeah, it was something. And then when Wendy was getting ready to leave on maternity, Tina showed up, and I didn't recognize her from junior high. We weren't in any of the same classes,
sure.
So we just kind of walked past each other in the hallway.
And she had played in Sky's the Limit, I think, and I know in my Dennis Anderson episode, she played with him for a little while in the Legend Band.
Yep.
That would have been before all this, right?
I'm not sure how that
timeline works.
Was.
Okay,
yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I know Tina left the Moonlighters to do something with Sky's the Limit. I believe.
Okay, all right. Maybe it's right around the same time.
But I really don't know the exact.
So she fills in for Wendy.
Well, yeah. I mean, we didn't know that Wendy was coming back. Wendy. It looked like Wendy was retiring.
Gotcha.
With her son Mark.
Interesting.
But as it turned out to be a maternity leave because Wendy did come back and go on. And
okay.
I remember, sitting in on the final day of the Moonlighters. They let me play a song or two, and sitting back and listening to the Moonlighters. At that point, John Portnova was playing drums with them at the time.
Okay.
And they were just great.
Yeah.
I mean, I could say that when I wasn't in the band. And they just sounded great. Wendy was never better, in the final year for performance of the band. And we had a reunion, a Moonlighter reunion.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
That was rather short-lived, but boy, what a great experience that was because I got to play with John Portnova for the first time.
Right.
Steve one last time.
Right.
And aside from that, the thing that was very important for me was, back in the day, we made a point. It was like a cultural thing for us not to compliment each other. It was kind of like we all want to stay humble. Let's not compliment each other.
Gotcha.
But as you get older and you mellow, you I think it's important to let people know how much you appreciate them.
Sure, right.
So because of that reunion, I was able to tell everybody,
Yeah.
And it's especially poignant to me because now Tracy Soggs is no longer with us.
Right.
Steve was recently passed.
Yeah.
Steve Borkowski had passed long before the reunion happened.
Okay. Right.
So
you got to say
the moral of the story is if you're playing with people
that you appreciate,
let them know how much you appreciate them while
great
you can.
point.
You can tell I'm an old guy now, right?
That's all right. That's all right. Well, that experience, both with Skylift and then into the Moonlighters, is the impression that I have of you because of the groove. The groove has been around for. I know we're kind of getting out of our timeline for the podcast, but you're not a guy that I know of that played in a trio or a rock band. You played in those bigger types of bands and still do, and put a lot into the performance of it. So the podcast ends at 89. And I feel like we're at that point in your musical career. You're raising a family. You're out of the Moonlighters. What happens then? You obviously continue to play music, right? Or do you?
Right. I play around the house.
Okay.
Things of that nature. Things that I'll probably be doing in retirement one day.
Sure. Right.
But, of course, now we have this recording technology that hopefully I'll take advantage of.
Right.
But, Bruce Bliley gave me a call.
Bass player.
Right. And he and Tom Snook were talking about getting a band started, and that band eventually became Lake Effect.
Oh, okay, sure, yeah.
So over the years, we had a number of great people that were part of it. Denny Fabrizi was our original keyboard player.
Yeah.
Sue Higbee was a vocalist. We had Dave Shantz. Angie Myers sang with us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we had some very, very good vocalists. And Debbie O.
I met Debbie O.
I have to look at my cheat
I met
sheet.
Debbie O last night, actually, at one of our music events. And Pat Ross,
Pat
great drummer.
Yep. Danny Canfield was our original drummer.
Yeah.
Pat Ross came in. I think I got everybody now.
Yeah. So that's a band that was around for quite a while.
That kind of started off as like some people have a golf night. That was our music night.
Cool. Yeah.
And there's no real goal to play out.
Right.
But eventually we kind of reached a critical mass and started playing places like the Oasis and Sandbar.
Sure. Yeah. This is like the 90s, mid-90s.
Yeah, 90s or 2000s.
Right. And eventually that falls apart, or you go your different ways, or
that about the time of the Moonlighter reunion.
Okay.
I decided I had a very big project going on at work.
Okay.
And the Moonlighter reunion opportunity came up, and I just couldn't. I'm not a multiple band guy. I know there's a lot of people in town. They're like in 6 bands at one time.
Right.
I'm not that
Mike
guy.
Russell, we're talking to you.
Yeah. I can't. That wouldn't be me.
Yeah.
I have too many other things going on.
Sure.
But not to say these people don't.
I'm with you. Yeah.
I'm just maybe I'm not as good of a multitasker.
Yeah, it's hard enough for me to remember the songs for one. Yeah. So I got you.
Well, as time goes on, it's becoming a single point of focus.
Right. So you stick in. You decide what I'm.
So I decide that as much as I loved everybody in Lake Effect, the opportunity to play with the Moonlighters again, just because of the history that we had, being on the road together, that's a whole different band relationship.
Right.
You have to, you share food poisonings with each other, all that stuff.
Oh, yeah. That's right. There's some history there. I gotcha. Right.
So, when the Moonlighters thing came up, I decided to do that. And, Lake Effect, I didn't leave on bad terms.
Okay.
When they needed somebody to sub on guitar, I got the call to do it.
Cool.
And that was, I appreciated that.
Yeah.
But then, shortly after the Moonlighter reunion kind of fizzled out. Timmy and I were in Rainbow Gardens listening to some other music event. I think Mike Redcliffe was singing with the Calientes or something.
Sure,
I think there were multiple bands that night, but shout out to Mike Redcliffe.
We would love to have Mike on. I've been in contact with Mike numerous times. And
that would be
Mike needs to be on this podcast.
Mike, get on the podcast.
See that? You deserve it, Mike.
Oh, absolutely.
We want to hear from you. Okay.
Mike's another guy that I remember back in the day in the 80s with Reds. They had a show.
Oh, yeah. That'd be another very similar band, wouldn't it? Yeah.
It would be a very similar band. You know, 2 male lead vocalists. But man, talk about packing a place.
Yeah, right.
You know, I remember getting the prime rib, you know, at Muggs and enjoying that show.
Yeah. So you and Tim are seeing, Mike play with Calientes or doing some reunion thing or something at Rainbow Gardens.
So we're there enjoying that. We're there enjoying that. And once the Moonlighter thing ended, we had already left Lake Effect.
Yeah, right.
So it dawned on me that I wasn't ready to be done yet. And I said, Tim, let's do this again. And Tim was kind of reserved about it and kind of tepid. But Timmy is not one to jump and commit into something right away.
Okay.
So I had to, see how things developed.
Right.
And I was originally recording Crosstown Rhythm and Blues.
Oh, yeah.
I had what is now our practice studio was like a entry-level recording studio.
Oh, okay.
I was kind of dabbling in that, but I didn't have good enough gear to really have a great studio.
Gotcha.
I had a functional studio.
Okay.
But we had some really nice recordings with Paula Holmes. And
I was going to say,
Buckle.
so this is the second incarnation of that band, right?
Yes.
And so Roy's not in that band yet.
Roy is in that band.
Oh, he is. Okay. So
Roy
him and Paula and Dickie
and Paul Grenberg was in that
and
band.
Paul's right.
And one thing led to another, and Paul and I, Paul invited me to start playing at Flight Path Fellowship.
Yeah.
So I did that. Had a great time. Got to know Paula Holmes better. I mean, I knew of Paula Holmes. She was an acquaintance, but I never really sat down and talked to Paula prior to that.
Yeah,
so that was a great experience.
That church had quite a band. Scott Campbell played
Scotty
there, too.
Campbell was playing guitar.
Yeah, right.
Jim Buman was actually
played there, right?
Yeah. And, a former Moonlighter drummer, Jeff Toon Clare,
he was playing there, too?
Was playing there. And, I don't think I mentioned, did we mention Jeff and the Moonlighters?
Yeah. No.
Oh, Jeff, my apologies.
Okay. He played in the Moonlighters, too.
Jeff was the drummer that was playing with the Moonlighters, and I think he was in my wedding.
Oh, okay. All
right. Jeff was in the band when I left.
Okay. All right. So quite a band at church, and you're also exposed to these folks at Crosstown Rhythm and Blues.
Right.
You're doing a little bit of recording. I'm seeing some familiar names as to the origin story of the groove.
Right.
So how does that come about?
Well, it started pretty much with we didn't have Britt and Roy involved from day one. We had Angie Borgia, who sang at Flight Path Fellowship.
Okay.
Paula Holmes.
Right.
And Tina Bell had reached out to me, who's Tina Sales. That's her married name.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So we'll just call her Tina Sales for sake of continuity.
Okay.
And we decided that we would, try to put a band together. Now, we didn't have a keyboard player. And we really didn't have a drummer.
Okay.
I asked Jeff to do it, but he really wasn't interested.
Okay.
So Paul brought in Jim Dowes.
Yep.
And I brought in Timmy.
Right.
And that was sort of the groove version 1.
Okay.
Unfortunately, Paula had to move to Florida.
Right.
And we lost Paula when she, went on that move.
Yep.
But we started off with 3 female vocalists.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's a different...
It's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
And then our first gig...
It reminds me of the Breeze Band.
In a way.
Yeah.
But that band was much more eclectic.
Okay.
We would do Journey songs, Earth, Wind, and Fire songs.
Yeah.
We did some jazz stuff. The mix of the Groove version 1 versus what we're doing now
is totally different.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. But the reason it's different is it really has to do with the philosophy that we have, or at least that I have.
Yeah.
And that is, if you want a band to do well, do what the singers naturally gravitate to. Don't force a singer. I was tempted because I would like to play the solo, but I would never force Roy or try to have Roy sing a Journey song because there was a cool guitar part.
Yeah, gotcha. Right.
And Roy and Britt kind of found their own way. Now, granted, Brittany inherited a lot of songs from version 1 of the band.
Gotcha. Right.
But Brittany's made them her own.
Absolutely. Yeah. With those two out front, I mean, you really can't go wrong. I mean, they're so in sync with each other, and I mean, now I'm gushing on the Groove. I mean, we're way out of our timeline, but I mean, the Groove has been around now for 10 years.
It's our 10th year anniversary this month.
That's awesome! Congratulations!
Thank you. One little Britt and Roy story from the early days. Brittany's first day coming down to practice, we had a couple other girls because I never heard Brittany before.
I was going to say, did you know of her? Like, where did you even find her?
We started off after our other girl vocalists left.
Yeah,
from the version 1. Paul suggested getting a hold of Roy.
Okay.
And so Roy came down, liked what he heard, and but we realized that we needed we needed somebody
balance.
else.
Yeah, for sure.
Balance.
Right.
I mean, the Moonlighters had Timmy covering most of the male leads and Wendy.
Right.
So I think you need the comparison or the contrast.
Yeah, right.
Probably a better term.
Breaks it up a little bit. Yeah, for sure.
So Roy knew that Brittany had won some singing competitions.
Oh, okay. All right.
And invited her down.
Cool.
And what was funny is when Britt first came down, she was singing very timidly.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until at the very end she kind of just let a Brittany out.
Yeah.
She sang like she can sing. And I remember turning to her and saying, there you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, kind of the rest is history.
Had she been in a band at all?
She had been in some bands before.
Okay. All right. And Roy had not, right?
Yeah, well, Roy was in Crosstown Rhythm and Blues.
Aside from Crosstown.
And prior to that, I think he was in some things with Rusty Jackson.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
gotcha.
But I don't know that he was like formally in the band.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that does take us to the end, doesn't it? That's great. We wrapped it up with one of my favorite bands in town, which has one of my favorite drummers. Anthony's a good friend of mine, and you guys are a lot of fun. But, you've got a bunch of bands that are similar to you guys in town. Not a bunch, but a few. I mentioned the Breeze Band, the Legend Band.
Right.
The bigger bands rather than just, like I said, 3-4 guys. So go out and see the Groove if you haven't had a chance. Tony, thank you very much for being with me today. This was great. Did we cover everything?
Well, I think we did. Thanks so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. And Wendy, we apologize again for that laundromat story.
Yes, and if I'm injured in the future, it's Wendy.
All right. Good. That's perfect. Thank you. Hey, if you want to know where the Groove or any bands are playing these days, check out Jack Stevenson's 2-Man Happy Hour podcast. That's the number 2, manhappyhour.com. You can find out everything you need to know about who's playing where and when. And Jack does a great job of getting around town and taking pictures with everyone. He's a big supporter of the live music scene. Special thanks to the JPT Foundation and John Tramontano, who runs that foundation, for their ongoing support of this podcast and also providing us with the hall for our monthly music night featuring the fabulous Leftovers. If you want to support the podcast, you can go to the website, eriemusichistory.com, and on the homepage, there is a drop-down button that says support the podcast, and you can do whatever you'd like there as far as supporting us. But for right now, I'm Chip Shell, and this was another great episode, and I appreciate you listening to the Erie Music History Podcast.